greetings, greetings. If you're watching by Facebook, greetings. If you're watching by YouTube, greetings. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that way you'll be notified each time new videos posted. I post these videos primarily to my Facebook page called Nycha'S Rent Now Fix It to share information that's going on with housing, Nycha tenants in particularly, and the movements and the fights that are underway to help save and preserve public housing. I also post videos that show the conditions that tenants are living in so that we can all see that we are collectively living in situations and circumstances that we shouldn't be. And I do it in the hopes that we can come together on a united front to help fight, save, and protect Section 9. Anyway, today's hearing at City Hall was held, and some residents and some TA leaders were present. Nycha was present as well, and the issue or the topic at hand to be discussed was the $78 billion that Nycha recently said that they need in order to totally rehabilitate their developments. That's a huge jump from the 40 billion that it was previously, but now Nycha is saying that they need $78 billion in order to totally rehabilitate their developments. So the topic at today's City Hall meeting, the public hearings at City Hall, was to address all those assessments. However, many people present addressed saving public housing in general. Councilman Charles Barron spoke, which I'm going to share some information with you about what he had to say about Nycha and his physical assessments. What I found interesting as he spoke about RAD is that some RAD developers are not totally rehabilitating the developments. There's a situation that he spoke of that told of how piping in the walls that needs to be done. Some of the developers aren't completely renovating the piping. They're only doing small portions of the piping, which to me is a wasted effort that will land tenants back in a similar situation that they're enduring right now. If you're going to renovate and you're going to bring tenants under a new lease and subject them to being displaced, you need to do the whole job over and get it right. But according to what he shared, that is not always the case. So I think that's another element by which to fight for those opposing RAD. We don't want half-baked jobs being done. We want total complete jobs being done. We are getting half-baked jobs being done under Nycha. So why would we switch to another lease under a private developer who's going to do the same? But anyway, you can hear those comments from Charles Barron when I show you the tape. We also had comments from tenants who live in Fulton, Chelsea housing, which was just recently in the media because after negotiating with the TA residents there, they came back and decided, well, the cost is going to be 1.5 billion. And instead of simply renovating, we're going to have to tear down your developments in its entirety. Tenants are not having that, some of whom spoke today at the public hearing. Tenants, for the most part, are saying that they were never given an opportunity to vote. The surveys that they were given said nothing about demolishing their buildings, and they feel that they've been deceived and lied to. I don't know, but that matter is ongoing. And according to the city council members speaking, there will be hearings concerning that to get more of a full story on what exactly happened and what's going to happen concerning those developments. We also heard testimony from Ramona Ferreira of Section 9, who's been launching a fight to preserve public housing as we know it. She gave testimony as well concerning the $78 billion assessment that Nycha came up with, which is questionable on all fronts. I questioned that myself during my testimony as well. I really feel that there needs to be a private entity to come and investigate whether that $78 billion is a true account of what's needed for Nycha. The simple fact is this: the more far away or the more unobtainable the money that Nycha says they need is, the more likelihood that they will be going direct into privatization. I think what people don't understand is their claim of being broke and needing funding is the cause or the thing that they're standing on, saying we must privatize, we must create a public trust to enable us to get these subsidies because we are broke, we don't have the money. And the more or the greater the cost that Nycha says, the more unwilling the city or the state or even the government is willing to pay it. So if you put out a figure that's so outlandish that none of these governments are going to pay it, then it leaves you with no other recourse except to go direct into privatization, where you have private developers who are willing to take on Nycha and renovate it, receiving billions and billions in subsidies in order to do so. So the benefit is to Nycha to put these far-fetched numbers saying this is what we need. It's in their interest to make the number so astronomical that the government, nor the city or the state, is going to pay for it. All they're going to do is give you a piece of money here and a piece of money there, a piece for this development and a piece for that development, while the overall Nycha remains in degradation and people remain in need of repairs while the situation gets worse and worse. I've said from day one, even before I became a president, Nycha needs to be fully funded, period. Stop playing games. Stop asking for a piece here and a piece there. That's all we've ever gotten, and it's gotten to where we are right now. We need full funding for Nycha, nothing less. That's it. If the government can send out 40 billion, which was on the table, over to the Ukraine, who to date is still asking for more money and who is more than likely to get it, then why can't you fund public housing? We're the largest housing authority in the city. Okay, we're worth it. As Miss Ramona Ferreira said, we are worth it. So why don't you foot the bill and pay the money? Anyway, I'm gonna show you all some clips of those who spoke today at City Hall and gave testimony. And so you can hear direct from the tenants. One tenant, an ex-TA president, told the city council that residents need reparations because that's how bad they've suffered underneath Nycha. But I'll let you hear her for yourself.
Ms. Glover?
Good afternoon, Chair Avales and your colleagues. Before I read what I wanted to read, I had asked you, wrote it down on paper. The actual thing I asked was about the ACOP. That defines the policy guidelines NYCHA uses in determining eligibility for Section 9 public housing admissions and continued occupancy. I just happened to hear about that. Somebody sent me an email. That's how I know about it. That was
Just to give you a little bit of clarification of something that was said by the previous speaker, who had asked a city council member to question Nycha while they were seated down on the panel as to whether they knew what ACOP was. The city council member misunderstood the question and instead asked Nycha if they knew what CCOP was. CCOP is the City Council of Presidents. ACOP is Nycha'S latest draft concerning its rules and regulations for its tenants. It was just recently released and publicized as a result of a lawsuit. That information is posted on this page, Nycha We Pay Rent Now Fix It, and I encourage each and every tenant everywhere, read the document. The new policies, rules, and regulations are in that document concerning how your rent is calculated, who has successive rights if you die or leave your apartment, transfers, everything that you will want to know concerning your tenancy is in that document. Not only that, tenants have the option to write to NYCHA to either add to that document in any particular category that they see fit, or to request that some part of it be amended, taken away. And you have 45 days to do it. 45 days from September 13th in which to do it. And after that time, the document, the new rules and regulations become final. So that's what the young lady had asked the city council member to question NYCHA concerning ACOP, its new rules and regulations concerning tenants in NYCHA.
That was like 2 days ago. The other thing I would like to say is, as a former TA president, I asked Brian Honan to stay around to hear my testimony. And as you see, he's still here. Thank you.
Ms. Glover, thank you. I'm so sorry that I did not hear it. I did not understand the question. I wanted to be able to ask what you wanted, but apologies. I asked about CCOP instead of COP. My apologies.
Thank you.
And I will say, the NYCHA team, while some of them leave, they have made it a point to stay. This is important that they hear directly from the residents and provide the courtesy that residents have offered by spending their time here. So I certainly, we have to give credit where credit is due, and I appreciate the NYCHA team staying around through this testimony.
Thank you. So, good morning, Chair. My name is Crystal G. Only reason why I don't want to say my full name, because I live in Washington Houses. It's very dangerous over there. Our TAs are now functioning with the politicians. They have abandoned their job. They're not utilizing their bylaws. And actually, someone in the federal monitor's office, when they have those monthly federal monitor meetings, she's not only a TA president, but she's on CCOP.
Oh, Tamika. She's
on CCOP. Tamika, I think, and she told me, no, it wasn't her. It was someone from resident engagement / civic, what's it called? / civic something, but it used to be resident engagement. Now it's resident engagement, civic
participation.
Partnerships. In any event, hopefully I'll be able to give my whole testimony since there's really nobody else waiting to speak. Okay.
Ms. Glover, we also have people online.
Oh, okay. So reparations simply means the payment of damages given satisfaction for a wrong or injury. The New York City Housing Authority owes its residents reparations, money, because of neglect. NYCHA stopped maintaining its properties for decades, causing them to deteriorate. For as long as I can remember, hard drugs were always sold on NYCHA property, but back then, management kept the buildings and parks and grounds spotless. We didn't have washing machines in our apartments because housing didn't allow it. We had laundry rooms. And then came crack. Destroyed our laundry rooms, and NYCHA allowed it. They let it go on. Tenants didn't report their neighbors because they were afraid and wanted to live. So they kept their mouths shut. This caused dysfunction, sickness, stress, death, and even suicide. In 2018, it became illegal to smoke cigarettes in the buildings. It's even on our lease now. But you didn't, NYCHA, you didn't create a way to enforce it. I was even on the panel because I was complaining about the smoke that I was smelling that was killing me. And they asked me, would you like to be on the panel? I said, absolutely. And I was one of the people who got this thing going. Yes, tenants can call CCC and report their neighbors, but smoke travels. We can't always tell where the smoke is coming from. You allow us a voice by giving us tenant associations, resident councils, whatever they call it these days. TAs are independent and democratic, which lets NYCHA off the hook because if tenants don't like the way their boards are working, they can vote them out. Most residents don't get involved because they don't understand the value of a RA. They don't understand the value of a RA. They don't understand that tenant associations are the conduit between management and tenant. That's a lot of power. So all these excuses about I tried to call this one and did this one, I was TA president before, and I know you can get things done when you were resident council. Okay, so they are scared, nor do the authority mingle with the residents. The authority doesn't mingle with the residents. Okay, everything is what we told CCOP, and that's the Central Council of District Council of Presidents, and we told the tenant associations, and we met with them, and this, that, and the third. Okay, it doesn't get to the residents, and unfortunately, a lot of the resident associations they haven't been educated. There's no training. Back in 2011, when I was TA president, you had organizations like Share for Life. They were what do you call it? Consultants. And they sat with us. There was so much information given to me at the time I got in. I thank you, Jesus. Okay. You go to the tenant leaders. I'm sorry, I only got a half.
That's okay. I want to be equitable for all the folks that are waiting online. So if you could
wrap up.
conclude.
Okay, thank you, sister.
Thank you.
You go through the tenant leaders, but some of them don't keep their tenants informed. I was told by a federal monitoring member that 95% of the TAs and RAs are not operating within their bylaws. 95%. That excludes the 5% that are doing their job. So don't get it twisted. To all the tenant leaders that fought, tired, got sick and died, this one's for you. Me, a resident of Nycha'S, I want my reparations. You claim you need billions of dollars. 3 years ago, it was 35 billion, now it's 78 billion. You claim you need billions of dollars to piece our buildings back together. Well, you are the reason they were destroyed. You will say the tenants, oh, they're a bunch of slobs. No, some are slobs, but most of them are good, decent, wholesome people. And I'll stop here. I want my reparations. I will never forgive Nycha'S. I'm tired. You abandoned me like a mother or father abandons their baby. Shame on you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me finish. I could say a whole lot more, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. You can also submit testimony for the record.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm a little under the weather, so I'll be right there with you. But we have a very, very serious problem in public housing. For the record, for the last couple of decades, I've been totally against the privatization of public housing, totally against the shifting the emphasis on Section 9 to Section 8. I've been totally against the RAD and PAT program. I don't trust the trust. And I think that, as with Councilmember Ayala just mentioned, I see the privatization also reserving apartments for market rate people that we can't afford in our districts or in our communities. You know, I saw some of the transitions, and I sat through most of the meetings, through the process of many of my developments being converted or changed over to RAD and PAT. In the process, they threatened many of the residents with being evicted if they didn't sign on to it. Many of them were fearful of that. They threatened the rent hikes and all of this stuff. And when we were on several occasions trying to speak against it, and we were promoting resident management, let the residents manage these buildings and provide the city, state, and federal money for the residents to manage their own facilities. Now, I know a lot of people said, well, you know, the state hasn't done this for all of these years. The feds haven't done it, and the city hasn't done their fair share. So we are privatizing. Well, some of the residents say, before we privatize and before you make me victims of privatization and at the mercy of private entities, I'd rather keep fighting for the public money, my taxpaying dollars to come my way. So for the record, I'm against RAD, I'm against PAD, and I'm against the trust. I don't trust these things for our residents. And some of it was superficial commercial stuff made up. We, as a matter of fact, one of the residents, in my district, we talked about the piping, and they said they're not gonna change all the piping, just a small percentage of it. So, you know, places like Linden houses and Boulevard houses and Florentine and some of the other developments in my district, I know Pink houses are debating whether they should do it or not. And the Cypress houses are debating whether they should do it or not. Penn Workman, those places that we have a real serious challenge. And I firmly believe that if we had more confidence and faith in our residents in the city that has a $107 billion expense budget and $60 some odd billion 10-year capital budget, why the hell can't we have some money for public housing? Talking about 78 billion. If you match the city, the state, and the feds capital money, that is more than enough there to take care of our residents in public housing. I quite frankly don't think that the state, city, or feds, and not even the private companies that you're leasing these properties out to or having managed them, have any respect for Black and brown people who are in low-income public housing. They have no respect whatsoever. We have a lot of complaints through the RED. We had hearings, not hearings, we had meetings, that all of the complaints about the conversions, about sometimes, and as you know, in Linden houses, some of the workers actually broke into one of the apartments, messed up the man's place, and we're still trying to find out who did it, and lied and said that, you know, someone else, it was a mistake, he was on the wrong list and all of that. There are a lot of problems with this transition to privatization.
Thank you.
Just as, I'm almost finished. Just as we have concerns about privatizing healthcare and privatizing housing and privatizing education, this benefits a predatory capitalist system more than it does the struggling tenants of public housing. So thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to say these few words. And I know we're getting into the detail stuff, but don't forget the macro picture. We have to keep public housing public and not privatize it. Let the residents manage their facilities where they live. That would be the best solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Barron. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ramona. Thank you.
Lunch. I had to start eating lunch because I couldn't wait anymore. So kudos to you guys for going on so long. So I wanted to say my name is Guapuque Ini Inaru, and my colonial name is Ramona Ferreira. I submit the following testimony on behalf of Safe Section 9, a national coalition dedicated to rehabilitating and expanding public housing. First, I want to thank the council for bringing us together to discuss the physical needs assessment. Those of us that live in Nycha are regularly disappointed by the city, the state, and the federal government. But as we continue to expand the Safe Section 9 coalition, it has become apparent to us that we haven't lost everything, because unlike our neighbors in many southern states, we still have our voices, at least in these hearings. Safe Section 9 has had one ally that's been examining the physical needs assessment really deeply, and we've made it a point to ensure that all of our members understand what it is and its implications. This is a really difficult undertaking for us, and it's something that really should fall on Nycha to prepare materials for each development so that every tenant understands what the physical needs assessment says and what it's hinting at. We know that Nycha has been inflating its physical needs assessment numbers, like many people mentioned earlier today. And they're doing so because they truly want to push us to believe that we are the only option is privatization. And I think that's something that they do really well in the press. And as they lobby elected officials pushing RAD, PAC, and the trust. We know right now that the developers involved in the Fulton Exit Chelsea houses have actually been visiting council members to make their argument. But as you heard today from tenants in that area, the needs for their homes are not something that justify demolition. And they love their community and don't want to have to go through a project-based Section 8 recertification process, which, as Diana Ayala mentioned earlier, might lead to them not returning. We simply can't afford to do that to this working class community. So I really want to highlight that while this 79 billion is truly overwhelming, and I know that ongoing conversations are going to help us get to what the real number is, it seems that only 40 something really reflect the needs that Section 9 itself has once we eliminate the funding that's going to be used for the RAD, PAC, and trust. But whatever that public housing number is, and whatever that cost is when this PNA is finally fully examined, we're worth it, right? Public housing is worth it. It's worth every penny. And NYCHA is the only housing provider that is truly affordable, mixed income ranging from incomes of $12,000 a year to 6 figures. And it's odd to us that as the mayor explores changing zoning laws to create housing that will serve all New Yorkers recently arrived and those that have been here for generations, he describes things that sound like public housing, but he refuses to name it so. So we must name it, and we must ensure that any new housing being created in New York City will be public housing under Section 9. But because of NYCHA's crooked ways and the fact that we've lost any sort of trust in them, it's important that we really start looking at creating a new public housing authority. Finally, I want to note regarding the Inflation Reduction Act, we in our lobbying at the congressional level have been talking to our congressional delegation for New York, and there is money that's already being earmarked for NYCHA. The city council, our congressional delegation, and anyone that cares about public housing really needs to ensure that that money coming in goes not to the trust, not to RAD, and not to PACT, but that it goes to the Section 9 portfolio. NYCHA has been telling us now for years that the private market can fix it all, right? It's going to be this magic bullet that changes our realities. And I think that it's time that we give them an opportunity to really prove their theory.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ramona.
Hello.
You may begin.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
I'm a resident at Fulton Houses, and I'm opposing this demolition, and I would really love for us to get a independent investigator for the accusations of our buildings, being deteriorated. If this plan goes through, what guarantee do we have that we will come back to this Section 8 based application? Because every Section 8 has the guidelines with their income. So I really don't trust NYCHA and their PNA, and I don't trust the elected TA president in our development, and they're trying to silence us. So we could show you some help over here so residents could speak and not be feared of the harassment we go through for speaking up of how we feel. And I think that vote or survey, whatever they gave, I didn't vote because it just doesn't make sense what the vote is. I do have a copy of that if anybody needs a copy of that vote so you can see the survey. It's very confusing and misleading. And it says nothing about demolition in that survey. It says construction. Construction and demolition are two different words. Construction is just, constructing a building, forcing it. making it better, but demolition is tearing down these developments, and these developments are not in bad shape at all. Been here 21 years, and I love my home, and I would love to keep it public housing, as a matter of fact. Because we're very limited to homes, you know, and we all have families. And this includes my neighbors, Chelsea Elliott. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Lara.
The next person to testify, Nycha'S.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you for being here. I'll try to be brief. There's a lot going on between the privatization of NYCHA and what's going on with the resident association boards. And I truly wish there would be meetings specifically to deal with these boards, the information or lack of information and training that's being given to help them effectively represent the members. As far as the $78 billion assessment that NYCHA has come up with, I question those claims for the simple fact that we all know rehabilitation of NYCHA is needed, and the lack of funding is a cause for the intention going towards privatization. The inability to obtain the funding needed, and also the failure to apply money that is given for specific areas within these developments. The $78 billion, although outlandish, actually works in favor of NYCHA because it is an amount that is unable to be obtained, that neither the city or the state or the government is going to supply. So it basically guarantees that there will be the privatization of NYCHA. No entity, whether public or private, should be able to drum up the costs by which they themselves shall benefit. I believe a private entity needs to be brought in to give a true accounting of the assessments and needs of NYCHA. I also believe that NYCHA should be more serious in its dealings with its resident association. I understand that they are required by mandates of HUD to enter into these agreements, but it's simply a requirement and a going through the motion. Based on the actions of NYCHA, the training being given, there's no real true intention on having a face-to-face on equal standing negotiation towards the future of NYCHA, and that needs to change. And it will only change when these issues are brought out and put on the table. And I hope that the city council and others will facilitate that being done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your testimony and your patience.
So what did I just say? I intend to be understood, even if not agreed with. What I attempted to say is this. The money that NYCHA claims to need to rehabilitate its developments has been solely and wholly declared by NYCHA and NYCHA alone. 25, 35, 40, and now $78 billion is claimed by NYCHA to be needed in order to fully rehabilitate its developments. While those assessments were being made, nobody but NYCHA came up with those figures. I need you to understand that it's in NYCHA's best interest to make those figures as unattainable as possible, because then you have arguments and bickerings between the city and the state on who's going to fund the money that NYCHA needs and how much they're going to fund the money that NYCHA needs. And when that money is obtained through city council members or state assembly members, NYCHA has a habit of sitting on the money and doing absolutely nothing. Nothing. All while continuing to raise the amount of money that's needed to fully rehabilitate its developments. When you make money needed so unobtainable by city, state, and government, who has totally bailed out of public funding, it leaves no other option but to go private, to private developers, whom the same government who has consistently year after year divested funding Nycha is willing to take that same money and give it to private developers. Do you understand? Or is it making sense? They are not into preserving public housing. They are fully vested in privatization because privatization yields profit. Preserving public housing does not. You will continually, year after year after year, apply money into it. They are no longer willing to do that. And until you understand the problem on that level, you will be barking up the wrong tree, trying to fight to preserve Nycha as public housing. Okay, they are divesting out of public housing across the United States. It's the reason you have a homeless epidemic on your hands across the United States. There's no more affordable housing. What they call affordable is not affordable to the average citizen because they are privating the hell out of these apartments so that nobody can afford them unless you can afford to pay market rate rents. That excludes a whole host of people, and most certainly the most vulnerable within this country and within this city. So if you don't understand that the government itself is fully divesting out of public housing and only willing to give a piece here and a piece there, and at best, a politician can only give you a piece here and a piece there, this is not going to change. It's going to continue going down, 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 which we're all witnessing right now. And while we're witnessing it going down and asking for a piece here and a piece there, guess what Nycha is doing? Privatizing the hell out of these developments. And as far as Pac Rat is concerned, they're more than halfway done. So if there's going to be a fight nationwide, it needs to get cracking like yesterday.